Welcome to Planet Poet Words in Space. I'm your host, Sharon Israel, and I'm so happy to welcome back to the show today poet, performance artist, and president of CAPS, Calling All Poets, Mike Jurkovic. Mike is here with me to read his latest work and discuss really exciting developments at the nonprofit organization Calling All Poets, CAPS, now entering its 26th year, Mike, in the Hudson Valley.
March will make 26 years, yeah.
Yeah, and poet at large Pamela Manché Pearce will appear later in the show. Hi, Mike.
Hi, good to see you, Sharon.
Good to you. I'm going to read your bio for everybody. And I just have to say, congratulations. Mike is the new poet laureate of Ulster County, correct?
Yes, I am, and it's a very nervous title, but it's okay.
Oh, there's a lot of work involved in the title too, I'm sure.
Yeah, from what I've heard.
Well, it'll be great. Okay, here we go. 2025 Ulster County Poet Laureate. Mike's poetry, prose, and music reviews have been published globally with little reportable income. Full-length collections include Buckshot Reckoning, Mooncussers, American Mental, Lucador Press 2023, 2022, and 2020. Haiku collections, Monet's Bamboo, Caps Press 2025, Blue Fan Whirring, Nirala Press 2018, President Calling All Poets, now in its 26th year in the Hudson Valley, and he's also a 2016 Pushcart Prize nominee. His CD reviews appear online at All About Jazz and lightwoodpress.com. Mike Jurkovic is the Monday 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. host of New Jazz Excursions on WVKR 91.3 FM Vassar College. And once again, Mike, congratulations on the new laureate position.
Thank you.
Do you have to wear a special outfit like when you read now and stuff?
I certainly hope not, but I'll find out on Thursday when she swears me in. We'll see what happens.
Let us know when it is. Let me know when your swearing in is, and I'll post it.
The swearing in ceremony is this Thursday, the 20th, at SUNY Ulster.
Oh, so. Wonderful. Sorry, I can't join you. I have to be out of town. Mike, would you please give us a brief history of CAPS and your history with CAPS?
Calling All Poets started in 1999 with Jimmy Eve at the Howland Cultural Center. He's the one who started it there. At that same time, I was doing I guess you could call it a poetry carny, going across. We weren't in one specific spot, but I was running a thing called Voices of the Valley, and we were going back and forth from one bookstore or venue to another a couple times a month. And Jim was stationed there at Beacon, at the Howland Cultural Center in Beacon. And we would always, I'd go to his readings, he'd come to mine and things to that nature. And he'd be like, look, you got to come to CAPS. And I'd be like, look, you got to come to Voices of the Valley. No, you got to come. And we'd go back and forth like that, becoming good friends and brothers, actually. And in 2023, a couple of creative things that I had, on the burner were slowly but surely burning out. And Jim said, look, man, why don't you just come to CAPS? Let's do it here at the Howland Cultural Center. And I said, yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. And so I joined CAPS in 2003, and we've pretty much co-directed the thing up until maybe about 2 years ago, when due to a couple of health issues and family issues, Jim's had to back away a little bit. So it's really been Greg Carell and myself, and Ken Holland helping out from here and there. But I mean, CAPS is the people who come on board. And ever since Zoom, those people have come from 3 different continents, at least half of the 50 states. And it's just been great.
It's a really long run. And it's very important to the Hudson Valley community. My husband, Robert Cucinato, and I we really were very happy to be on the program, be on featured Calling All Poets. And David Shell was the remarkable sound guy. I'm not giving him
a better at Greenkill, yeah.
Yeah, at Greenkill. And now you're expanding again. You're expanding Calling All Poets. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we've gone into we've developed we've started our own press called Caps Press. Obviously, we put out three anthologies. 2025, which was our 25th anniversary that came out last year, and 2020 and 2015. They were edited by Marina Mate, Roger Aplon, and Ken Holland for those three anthologies. We also put out two Aphraxis catalogs while we were with the Roost Studios in New Paltz from 2016 to COVID. We did a couple of Aphraxis readings and things, and we put those into a catalog two different times. And now we've actually branched out, and we printed a chapbook by Fred Poole, who was a well-known writer here in the Ulster County area. Larry Carr, whose support of CAPS cannot be overstated, and my own Monet's Bamboo.
Hmm. I love that title. It's great. You're very prolific, and instead of slowing down, the organizations have like a grow an inception period, growth period, a go-go period, and then it sort of tapers off. But this is keeps CAPS keeps going. You're having poets from outside the country also right now.
Yeah, well, again, that's thanks to Zoom. And I mean, it sounds really strange to say, hey, COVID, we really benefited from COVID, but we did. We got to meet people like you. We got to meet people from Florida that have an organization, Performance Poets in Florida, and Lenny De La Roca. We got to, I had known Patricia Carrigan from Brownstone from performing live, but once she went on Zoom too, everything just started cross-pollinating. And that's how I mean, the very first Zoom that we did in 2020, we got Zoom bombed, which was rather disgusting, but we haven't had a problem since. And
Yeah,
the
that
people
was an early thing, Zoom bombing. It stopped. I don't think it's a thing anymore.
I don't think so either, although a friend of ours who runs a thing called Artful Dodgers out of somewhere, it's either in Brooklyn or Long Island, I can't remember where Harvey's from. He got bombed just 2 months ago, actually.
Really?
But that's the only complaint I've heard of.
But it's exciting because I didn't know about calling all poets, and through through Zoom and at the COVID period, it sort of expanded my life. My life has expanded.
Yeah, that's what I mean, that honestly is what a lot of people say. That, we kept it going when there wasn't any, you couldn't get out. And well, it was a little nerve-wracking, I'll admit, but it's really paid off.
It's great. Mike, would you read one of your poems, The Whereabouts of Heaven? Is this from the Bamboo, from Monet's Bamboo?
No, Monet's Bamboo is haiku only. This is from a new manuscript, I guess you could say I'm working on. It's got a temporary title at the moment called These Journals I Inhabit, but who knows where that's going to go. And this is called The Whereabouts of Heaven. I was building a skyscraper when I ran out of sky and cozied up to the whereabouts of heaven, above our false hosannas, way up in the clouds where no one speaks but sings beautifully, above the movement of money, gunfights and late stage cancer, grade school body counts and shots per round, up there in the blue beyond wonder, where tomorrow threatens no one, where angels woo the glade.
It's Mike Jurkovic reading his poem, The Whereabouts of Heaven. Beautiful rhythm in that. You read beautifully, but it sounds so good when you listen to it. And I think poetry
Thank you.
should always be that way, rhythmically. I love Where Angels Woo the Glade, where you ran out of sky, and you press on familiar language and make it unusual, very unusual.
Well, it seems that the new poems are coming up with a rhythm all their own, and I'm trying to line space it that way and word break it that way. So, if there's a break between a word, it's because I'm trying to count the beats to the word to keep the rhythm going. So that's the new experiment anyway. Yeah.
And would you read another poem for us?
All right, this one has actually been reshaped to the concept that I was just telling you about, but the poem itself is literally, I don't know, 30 years old. And it's called My Love Don't Dream, She Vignettes. My love don't dream, she vignettes of three cats in a universe of mad deco design, where chimps repose in rose boxes and people from the past parlay with punks like me in priestly attire. Town crier with mambo stick unblocks the clock that blocks all whim, setting free upon a sea of no truer than true absurdity of candy cane and ravage. Take that! You savage swivel eye, my love don't dream, she vignettes.
I love the way you make vignette, which is a noun, into a verb.
I didn't even realize it was a noun.
I think so. I just knew it as a vignette. A vignette is an evocative piece of uh, acting or a small portion,
Oh
contained
yeah. Oh yeah,
skit.
yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah.
it's unusual, rare to do that. And My Love Don't Dream, she vignettes. I see a dance there. Um, how is vignettes different from dreams as a verb? You say she
I
doesn't dream.
because she when Emily dreams, it's I maybe it's not even a vignette, it might be a whole novella. I mean, the detail is there, uh the plot is there. It just seems more than a dream sometimes.
Mm. But it's a real poem because it's very fanciful and it's not really linear.
Recently, someone mentioned what had read. Recently, someone had read some of these newer pieces, and they were like, "Wow, man, it's kind of like a collage thing that you got going on." And I was like, "Yeah, I really like that idea of a collage."
Yes, because it's rhythmically uniform, I think. Are you doing syllabics in each line?
Not that I'm
Like
liking.
10 syllables to a line or something like that.
Yeah, no, I'm not. No, I'm not doing it that way. I'm whatever the line demands rhythm wise, I'm breaking it up. So if it's 17 syllables line, it's 17. If it's 10, it's 10.
It seems very cohesive though, because the rhythms really bring them together. So it's a collage, but it's you. Mike, would you like to read some of the poems of upcoming guests, featured poets that are going to be appearing at Calling All
Yeah,
Poets?
yeah,
Um,
that would be okay.
yeah, you had mentioned the poet Joanne.
Deciduous. It's yeah.
It's a great name. Is that a Greek name? Do you know?
I believe so. I honestly don't know. I'm for a while there, she was going by the name Joanne Dew, just shortening it a lot. But she's going with Deciduous now. So
It's a very interesting name. It could sound Latin also. Or tell us a little bit about the poet.
all right, Joanne Deciduous has been a longtime supporter of CAPS. Wonderful person. She teaches at SUNY New Paltz, creative writing. She's been with us for a really long time. Actually, she started with CAPS as a teenager and then went like disappeared for a while she was getting her career together. And recently, I think right before COVID came back, and she's been with us ever since. She has a new chapbook out on Finishing Line Press called Lost and Found. She will be one of our three features on first Friday of March, March 7th. And her poem is called The Breach, and this is after Lee Herrick. Do you remember the night you were born? How soon your newborn parents tried to make sense of the sea and stars, pantomiming the human condition amid a dark sky, falling through a field of constellations. You, tiny one, in feathers of gold, practice descent, shape story shadows by nightlight alone in your room. They forgot to tell you that the stars and tides were also you, Remember the love-thick scent of ocean air and lemon oil perfuming rooms of heirloom furniture, far from where you were made beneath a sturgeon moon, swimming in blue? Always searching, you'd reach each cloud aloud in restless breaths, naming destiny from tarots of madness. Still, whichever card your mother's overturned landed in light. What miracle, dear supernova, to be born from a collapsing star's heart, the sound of your first self dying.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
That's a
Uh,
great poem. The Breach, um, by Joanne
Joanne Deciduous.
Deciduous. Thank you, Mike. The the imagery in that poem and the rhythm of the poem, nicely read, by the way. I love falling through a field of constellations and the cloud aloud. She has internal rhyme there. What do you think she means by the breach?
Well, knowing Joanne's history like I do, she was adopted, and so I think she's reflecting back on just some, who knows what relationships are reformed or remade or broken as one's life goes on. And I think that's what if she's not hinting at it, she's definitely getting at it. Yeah.
Mm. It's full of emotion. It's a very poignant, beautiful poem. So that's the poet from the Hudson Valley. And Mike, could you introduce Julian Matthews to us?
Julian Ma- Julian Matthews, it will also be featuring with Joanne and Tom Festa on March 7th, Zoom only. You can always get the information at www.callingallpoets.net. Julian came to us about 2 years ago. He joined in as an open mic person, and when I tell you, he literally blew the doors open, the virtual doors and the virtual windows out of the Zoom. I'm not kidding you. People were just overwhelmed. He's from Malaysia. I don't know exactly where, but he's from Malaysia, and uh, he's just been with us for at least 18 months now. And his poem is called Shadow. I wonder where shadows go when people die. Do they ascend like souls to heaven and wait their turn to be sent down again? To loyally follow a new owner around like a lolling puppy? A life of service without so much as a petting or a bone, growing by day, crouching under the cover of feet at midday, shedding its thin cloak by late afternoon, and just retiring until the next day, unless the owner is nocturnal, aroused under streetlights, frequents low-lit bars, and it makes a walk-on guest appearance on tenement walls, grungy alleyways, bouncing across the room like a bendy acrobat, cast by a bedside lamp just in time to steal the show. Shadows, after all, have their own allure, their aesthetic so cinematic, until the last candle on the altar is put out and they descend into the abyss, that starless realm where all good shadows eventually go to take their bow. Julie?
That's remarkable.
Yeah, I cannot express enough how the first time he read for us, and he actually shared the screen so you could read it along with him. He's got this very syrupy, cinematic voice, and everything just. I mean, people were just so blown away. It was unbelievable. So we're finally getting him to feature for us on Friday, March 7th.
And are your features archived? Can we access them?
Yes. Well, I don't have all the Zooms up online yet, but there are well over 70 videos at the Calling All Poets YouTube page. And I have made a practice lately, at least the last couple of months, that as soon as the Zoom is over, I download it and throw it up on YouTube. I'd like to say I edit it, but my programs are too slow to edit it, so I don't get a chance. So there's some oohs and ahs and, interruptions in it, but it's there.
Thanks, Mike. The poem he personifies, the shadow, is so immediate. The shadow's doing all kinds of things, including a walk on tenement walls. So I You did a beautiful job, and I can't wait to hear Julian Matthews read his own poem.
Yeah, I mean, when he reads it, it's just, there's a reverberance to his voice, and the way he writes also is just really, the word to say cinematic is a bit, I don't know, mundane, but
No, no, not at all. It's very evocative.
okay.
I also
Yeah,
like that
that's
you
him.
said that he blew out the virtual windows.
You really did. I mean, people were just, because you try to mute while people are reading, right? And sometimes you miss a mute here and there. And the guy was finished, and it was like, "Ooh, whoa, I mean, people were just
Oh, that's
thinking
great.
that. Yeah.
So, Mike, we have a little time to talk about upcoming events. I mean, you mentioned the March 7th show of Calling All Poets and publications. Can you tell us a little bit about future guests that you're going to have, future poets?
Yeah, actually, uh, yeah, we got on April 4th, we're going to first we do CAPS does two events a month, although we might start doing an alternate month, second Tuesday. That's in the works. We haven't figured that part out yet. Every first Friday and every third Thursday at 7 p.m.
Mhm.
Zoom only. On April 4th, Janet Kaplan, Ethan
Oh,
Surratt, and Victoria Riedel will be reading for us. I think you
oh,
know Janet.
yes, yes. Janet was just on the show. She's fabulous, just on my show. And Victoria Riedel, I know her too,
I
somehow.
Victoria and I read for a thing called Poets for Harris that eventually became an anthology.
Hmm.
And when I heard her read, I was just like, "Whoa, you got to come to CAPS!" And she was like, "Yes, I do." And so there she is.
So that'll be up April
And
4th.
April 4th, yeah. And then on April 17th, longtime CAPS supporter, wonderful poet. She's got a full-length collection out on Kelsey Books. Unfortunately, I can't remember the title at the moment.
Mhm.
Mary Louise Kiernan will be on April 17th. I can mention May. On May 2nd, we have Jared Harrell, Nancy Shee Nodal, and Kathy Weld. And on May 15th will be Jim Zimmerman.
That's excellent. Thanks, Mike. You do so much for everybody, and these the Zoom recordings are really beautiful quality. The visuals, the audio quality is very good, and I encourage everybody to attend the Zoom sessions.
Yeah, come on by if you can. It's always, I mean, we had one Zoom session a couple months ago. Michael Macklin O'Hara from Florida read for us. And when I tell you that people were saying, "Oh my God, this was almost Shakespearean," I'm not kidding you.
Wow. So it's you do them on Zoom, but there is a little audience in where you
Well, the audience is the Zoom audience, yeah.
yeah, it's a Zoom audience. It's a Zoom. You used to have some chairs for people for a live audience as well. I remember at Greenkill, but that's
Yes, we do. We were doing the live streams at Greenkill, and we stopped doing that. And we were doing live hybrid, live Zoom readings at Unison in New Paltz. But folks just weren't coming. And so it's like when you got 8 people sitting there listening to the poem in person and you got 40 online, it's like it's a lot easier to just do it online.
absolutely. And you get a lot of people. 40 is great. And the fact that you do this twice a month and you're going to add these Tuesdays, that is remarkable.
We're throwing around the idea. It wouldn't be every month. It would be like every 2 months. There'll be a second Tuesday where it would be just a total open mic kind of salon thing for people to enjoy.
It's a lot of work. What you do is a lot. It's very work intensive.
Scheduling mostly. I mean,
Yeah. Mike, we have time for another poem of yours. Would you read Mediums, Mystics, and Madmen for us?
all right, let's go for it. Mediums, mystics, and madmen all decked out in a wild dance around the pyre at the Cafe Adversity. Flim flam, fraud, and failure have run out on their tab. And Barney, the old bailiff, will have another beer. Hey! It's the Lord of Mentor Street sitting with the seer as another virgin liberal in a clashing suit and tie cries, "Silence is not poetry, it's the gag rule of the oppressed." A tyranny of mind, a kleptocracy of poets. Cross-dressed presidents crawl onto the stage. Applause resounds, rebounds, reverbs with fife and drum as liars lie to liars and the truth on ashes born. Rocked, mock, skittled scorn, see the king has tumbled. And if he asks you, tell him this. It's all a succession of steps and stumbles, mediums, mystics, madmen know the score. Don't give the parson half a chance when he's idling out the door. And I have to make an admission, that one is 30 years old also.
Really? I love the kleptocracy of poets. That's a great title for a book.
Well, you can have it. Go for it.
I'll give you full credit if I use it. That's Mike Jurkovic reading his poem Mediums, Mystics, and Madmen. And Mike, could you just tell us briefly what you have in mind as Poet Laureate for Ulster County? Have you thought this through yet?
Yeah, there's two things that I really want to do. One that we learned from doing the 25th anniversary anthology. We did part of the anthology was an in memoriam of the folks here in the Hudson Valley or from New York or wherever that have passed on, and that were part of that. And I would like to try and establish at least a poet in memoriam type
Hmm.
of thing. So I'm going to talk to Arts Mid Hudson and the county about that. I would also like to try and establish a Hudson Valley Poetry Archive. I have it in my head how it should work. I don't know where the money or any of it's going to come from, but I want to talk to the county about that. I'm going to be doing some readings. I have some libraries scheduled, not yet scheduled, but lined up to do things. I got a few featured readings of myself, of my own coming up. I'm going to be in Saratoga in August, and the Italian American Writing Center somewhere on 46th Street in July.
Hmm.
And I'm going to just try and do outreach. I want to do some themed readings with folks. I'm already talking to Joanne about possibly doing something in the fall at the college. So yeah, that's pretty much what I got in mind.
That's a lot. I love the archived poetry idea. That's really makes a lot of sense.
Well, there's so much. I mean, one thing that CAPS did from literally the very beginning was record everything. I mean, we were videotaping, we were audio recording, and then when things started getting downloaded and live streamed, obviously that's all recorded. There are so many books and papers, and there were several poetry magazines here. Um, and
Yeah,
the archive doesn't necessarily have to come from us. I mean, Philip Levine does Woodstock Poetry
sure.
Society, whatever he has, if you feel like donating a few things,
Absolutely.
wherever it comes from, it would all just enrich the whole situation.
Oh, thank you, Mike. That's really important. And the CAPS has its own extensive archives. And I love what you mentioned about Philip Levine, and I would be happy to help. It's been a pleasure, Mike Jurkovic. Thank you so much for coming on, reading your great work and the works of the other poets that are going to be appearing on the
Yeah,
on Zoom on CAPS.
yeah, March 7th.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sharon. Always a pleasure.
And now joining us from Manhattan is Planet Poets, Poet at Large, Pushcart Prize nominated poet and visual artist Pamela Manché Pearce. How are you, Pamela?
I'm so delighted to be here today with you, thinking about our many years together on WIOX and, your fabulous work in creating Planet Poet from nothing really. I mean, it was your idea and, everything starts with an idea. and you really made it happen. And when I knew I was going to be here today talking with you about it, I tried to figure out and what makes you such a wonderful host and interview. And there are really two, I mean, can boil it down to two things. One of them is I think that you create such a warm and exciting environment for the poets that you choose and make them feel so welcome and safe. I think you make them feel very safe. And one of the reasons, and that took me a little while, um, and this is important, you actually read their work
Yes,
and you
that's true.
read about them. So when you show up with your guest, you know who they are and you know about their work and you have really done your homework. And a lot of hosts in other contexts don't do that, and the guests always know it. So that's what you do. And I think you just did a phenomenal job.
Thank you so much, Pamela. That means so much to me. But you know, when I was asked to do this show many years ago in 2012, I said, Pamela, what should I do? And we said, you have to be on the show. And you started with me at the very beginning.
I did.
And this is before the program was called Planet Poet.
Right.
Words in Space. It was the poetry hour at the Writer's Voice. I was on once a month. And you had been in the Hudson Valley based program group that you founded called Poets Read Poetry.
Right.
And so we concocted this scheme to have one of the 4 Poets Read Poetry members on for every show. And we did that for a while, for a couple of years.
It was like the stable of poets. And just to take a step back, I should tell, what PRP we call it, which was a group of poets when I was living in Garrison and I was very hungry for a good conversation. I realized that there were 3 poets that I knew in the area, Joe Pitkin, Andrew Acciotto, and Frank Ortega, and I invited them to my house once a month to talk about poetry, which is not our own poetry, but a theme of talking about the poetry of other poets. And we did that, and we did that in person. And we stopped for a while, and then we resumed a few years ago during the worst period of COVID. And we've been doing it on Zoom. And to our great pleasure and success, we invited you, Sharon, to be one of us.
I'm
So we're
so
all
happy.
poets reading poetry.
Yeah, it's a great group, and it goes the 2 hours that we meet once a month go really, really fast. And so this was a great pleasure and a great anger for me when I started the show. But one of the greatest things was when PRP came in person to the studio to have a show. And there were 3 of you, Pamela, Joe Pitkin, Andrew Charo, but Frank Ortega was not able to come. He was living in Key West, so he called from a phone booth in Key West, which was a great highlight of the show.
It was a highlight, and we could hear the traffic outside the street of the phone booth in Key West. And somebody, if I recall, somebody wanted to make a phone call, and he was going to be on this thing for an hour. So they were knocking on the phone booth door. It was incredible. But what you probably don't know is that we drove up from Cold Spring, and we weren't. Something was going on in our brains about time because we stopped for lunch. We're having a wonderful time. We're having a lot of as writers, talking, and then somebody said, "Oh my God, we've got to get to the radio station," and we just made it. We
It was
just made it. So that was fun. We had so much fun.
It was great. And so that carried on for a while. And then the writer's voice stopped. I had my segment became my own show. And then I had the idea. I said, Pamela, would you like to be Planet Poet's Poet at Large? And Pamela graciously accepted. And that's been going on, I think, since 2016.
I think so.
I think
At
it's
least.
9 years.
Yeah. And many topics have been covered. And, I've cooked up many things for my 10-minute segment. And I realized recently that I have 40 hours of Planet Poet
Amazing.
commentary to work with, and I'm thinking of possibly making an audio book, a book out of that. But I've covered so many things, and before I get in, I'll give you some highlights because I'd love to share that. I want to thank Robert Cucinotta for everything, Robert, wherever you are, uh, for everything that Robert has done for this show. Number one for me is that for the podcast, I realized if he got paid for every of mine that he's erased, he could probably have a beach house in the Bahamas right now with that money,
My
right?
ums too. Yeah.
And ums and stumbles and everything. So Robert has done a remarkable job
He's
of
a really,
editing.
he's really a brilliant editor. I might say I'm prejudiced, he's my husband, but he's a brilliant editor.
And he's my friend of 50 some
Yes.
years. I mean, I've known, he really is. And also the music, it's Robert's fantastic composition, which introduces the show. And I am so proud that there is actually music that is the poet at large music. I mean, who gets that to happen in their lifetime? So I had that. So
Oh, you
thank
do,
you,
and
thank you, Robert.
that introduced you today also, and it's a great highlight, and his gorgeous music that closes the show, the introitus. So yes, I'm deeply appreciative of Robert because I don't think I could do this without him. And we do some live shows, but we do a lot of Zoom shows, and that has been an interesting project, a very interesting way to go. It's relaxed, more relaxed, I think, because the foibles of live radio are many. It's a great studio. It's a great group that run the station and the hosts at the station. But sometimes the phones go out. One infamous time there was a blackout, and then we had to get everything running again. So it's been great. But Pamela, what are some of the highlights that you thought
Okay.
over the years?
I think that once I landed on, I write and I also began to make visual art in about 2014. No, 2008 rather. And these two things coalesced in my work as poet at large when I created my series that I call Cross Pollination. And I talk about the connection, which is remarkably prevalent, of visual art and poetry and music, but mostly in my case, visual art. Either the poet also makes visual art, or the visual artist also writes poetry, or they're writing about each other, or they're being inspired. And so I've done a lot. I've done a lot of these, and three that really popped into my mind were Chagall. Um, Marc Chagall, we think of him as having this lovely, lovers flying in space and a lot of bright and pastel colors, brides, bouquets of flowers. And when World War II came about, he changed. He changed course, and his visual art became very dark and heavy and dark colors. He was responding to his outrage over what was happening in Europe, especially in the Holocaust. So one of his Chagall's famous poems, written in 1951 in response to World War II and the Holocaust and the trauma afterward, the translation is either for the slaughtered artists or to the martyred artists. And here's an excerpt. I see them trudging alone in rags, barefoot on mute roads, the brothers of Israel's Pizarro and Modigliani, our brothers, pulled by the ropes of Durer, Cranach, and Holbein to death in the crematoria.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
And his visual art was just as dark. So I remember learning that and bringing that to Planet Poet. The other one, which is Picasso. I mean, could you talk about art in the modern world without Picasso? Of course not. But you, Sharon, tipped me off that Picasso also wrote poetry. I didn't know that.
It was astounding. This guy, he's just stopped painting for a while and he just tossed these things off. He said, I can do this.
Exactly. And he did. And it was supposedly as a result of a divorce and getting fleeced financially. And there's a wonderful book called Pablo Picasso and other poems. And this is so here's an excerpt of something of his translated by Jerome Rothenberg. And he wrote this in 19 when he went into this poetry phase on April 18th, 1935. And here's an excerpt. If I should go outside, the wolves would come to eat out of my hand, just as my room would seem to be outside of me. My other earnings would go off around the world, smashed into smithereens. But what is there to do today? It's Thursday. Everything is closed. It's cold. The sun is whipping anybody I could be, and there's no helping it. So many things come up so that they throw the roots down by their hairs, out in the bull ring, stenciled into portraits, not to make a big deal of the day's allotments, but so he writes this very poetry. It's all very stream of consciousness. It's set up in prose, and that was translated by Jerome Rothenberg.
It's such a great excerpt, the wolves eating out of his hands. It's surreal, but I also
Absolutely.
got an intimation of Frank O'Hara, the him talking about the everyday. Well,
Right.
for him, the everyday, but it's surreal. But
Right.
I'm looking around here, and here's this, and here it's so matter of fact. That was unusual for
Right.
poetry in those days, but he took directly from his friends.
Sure.
What
Absolutely.
what a competitive guy. He outdid them all.
He's always he had to be in everything, and he was in everything. And the other one in this series that is one of my great favorite painters is Cy Twombly. And the great book about him is called poetry in paint. And this is what he did. He was very enthralled by the ancient world, and what he did is he combined painting, drawing, and writing. And he broke down the distinctions, all of this. So you see on his canvases where he painted words, that he painted excerpts of Sappho and other poets. And I'm a great fan of his, and I love bringing him to the show also, Sharon.
Yeah, his work is very delicate, but I think wasn't he one of the first, perhaps the first famous artist to incorporate text in the actual painting? I'm not quite sure.
Part of the difference is his work is very gestural. This is how I understand it. It's a big subject, but that he was painting. He paints the words onto the canvases with paint. So he's not culling them from other sources like newspaper, like Brock and Picasso, when they really they kind of invented collage, that they were sourcing it in other places. But the thing with Twombly is that he's incorporating it. And he's breaking down the distinction between a painting and written language, or text. So
Beautifully put, Pamela. It really helps
thank you.
me understand that. What's the name of the book on him?
The book that I absolutely love is Reading Cy Twombly, Portrait in Paint by Mary Jacobus.
Hmm.
And
I,
Twombly has a big show up in Manhattan right now, or through March. And I'm a great fan of his.
hmm.
So
I can't remember off the top of my head who said this, but there is such a connection between poetry and painting. Somebody said that painting is silent poetry.
mhm, mhm.
And because there, even if a painting is realistic or whatever genre, it's dreamlike. It's not linear.
Right. And
It's
there's always mystery about it.
there is. There is. That's
So
great.
that series has been so much fun for me. I mean,
Oh,
I should really say that I've delved into subjects that I never expected. And, I had 10 minutes, so I've had this vast amount of material that I've read usually, and I've learned a lot.
Well, I have to compliment you on your segments. You pack so much into 10-minute segments, and it's really artfully done. It's a master class in whatever subject you're doing in a 10-minute format.
Sharon. That is so sweet. And it's hard, because I wanted, I know I talk fast and I know that I'm intense, but I want to, there's so much to say on every one of these subjects.
And your enthusiasm, and you can tell that you're a poet at large. You're discovering things for yourself and then sharing them with us. So I really appreciate that.
Thank
It's
you
great.
very much. Thank you, Sharon.
So
Um,
Pamela, tell us, how about the guests? We've had many, many guests on the show, and they're all wonderful in their own ways. Can you talk about a couple of them that have struck you? Not really struck you, but have stayed with you?
it's really hard, Sharon, because I find something to like about every guest, or I find to learn something about every guest. And I think that again, back to you about your excellence as a host, I think you bring out the best in every single guest that you have. I really mean you have a
Thank you.
you are in knack, and you're really really great at that. I think that two, I will say this in with respect to every guest who been on the show. I think there were two guests that stand out for totally different reasons. One of them is Maria Gillian Mazziotti. Did I pronounce
Yes.
that right? Yes.
Yes.
Maria, we both met in Patterson, did we not? Or we know her from,
Correct.
we
We went
went
to
out
see
there.
Tina Spada give a workshop and a reading, and we met her there.
Wasn't Patricia Smith there too?
That was another time that we were,
Second time, right.
correct?
But we had these, Sharon and I took these adventures out to Patterson, New Jersey, right? Adventures in poetry. And Maria was a guest on the show. And I think I liked her. I liked a number of things about her. One is she's also a visual artist.
Yes.
So I relate to that about her. But she was so relaxed and so warm and so natural in reading her work and discussing her work. And she's a very confident person. I mean, I really felt that. And the poetry that she read, um, she gave us a lot of herself. She gives the reader a lot of herself in her poetry, and I felt that. I felt that I was just in her, in her orb, or whatever word you want to use. I felt very connected to her
Yes.
in that show, and I have a feeling you did too, Sharon.
Yes, and she's been on I think two times.
Right.
And I think you were on both of the times, and she illustrates, as you said, she illustrates her own work. And I think the show you're talking about, she was also talking about how she has incorporated painting into her life. But
Yes.
she's a woman of incredible accomplishment, putting Patterson on the map with her poetry series, with the Patterson Prize and other things that she's done, her teaching. But yes, she's a very genuine person and very funny.
And authentic. I mean, genuine and authentic is another, I think that, and you just know that when you hear her, you meet her, or on the show, or you read her work, you know that there's a real person. There's a real, which is not an easy thing to do. So,
It's
kudos,
really,
kudos to her.
yeah.
So
On the radio too. It's a very intimate medium,
it
and
is.
she works very well with that.
Yeah.
And as you do, and there's a connection without seeing,
Right.
and that's all I have to say about that. Go
You
ahead.
feel like you're right there. The other person is Jeffrey Nutter, who you and I know quite well. Sharon and I know him quite well. And I think that, as poet at large, I'm waiting to go on at the halfway, and sometimes I'm in my own head. I'm going over my notes, and I always have too much information. But I think that when Jeffrey was on the show, I mean, two things happened with him. One is I think that him reading his own work is so riveting. I
Yes,
think that was so engaged by him reading his own work that I didn't want to think about anything else. I didn't care. I cared less about what would happen when I went on. I just wanted to hear him reading. His work is beautiful, and his delivery is really riveting. the way that he just is relaxed with it, and it's wonderful. The other thing about him was that I thought that he was able to illuminate ideas about poetry when in his segments. I thought that he did a masterful job of that, that knowing his subject and loving, I mean, this man loves poetry, and you know that this is, he's passionate about it, and uh, so knowledgeable. And he was able to present that on a radio show with, you know, with all the limitations that there are, in a totally illuminating way, which was equally riveting. So those two guests are ones among all these many, many, many that stand out for me for very
Mm,
different.
that's beautiful, Pamela. Yes, he's so authentic. And as you are in everything you do for the show, in your art, in your poetry. So thank you so much, Pamela Manché Pearce, poet at large for Planet Poet Words in Space. Come
Thank
back.
you, Sharon.
You'll be on soon again.
I will be on soon again. And thank you so much for all these great experiences and this wonderful, wonderful times we've had. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.